So I'm guessing, if you've already reached this point and now you're watching the third video, you still want to be a paramedic. My name's Ayaz, I'm a paramedic, been practicing for 5 years now. So this is video number 3 in the series. If you've reached this point, I'm guessing you've got here because you took some value in the first 2 videos. If you find value in this video, make sure you press the like button and subscribe, as I'll be releasing a new video every single week. In this video, I'm going to be talking about all the different assessments that you will go through before actually starting a student paramedic program, whether you go through university or if you go through an ambulance service. As always, a little bit of a disclaimer, there is going to be some bias coming from me, as I went through an ambulance service. I never went through university, so I'm obviously going to know a lot more about the ambulance service route than I will about the university route. However, I do my research, I get the information together and I present it to you. So the aim of this channel is to help answer them burning questions that you might have about how to become a paramedic within the UK, but it's also a platform for me to share some of my passions, some of them including anatomy and physiology, and many other things that are paramedicine related. I will be covering all these topics as time goes on. If you haven't already watched the first couple of videos, I recommend you do. I will drop the link right now, and make sure you watch the first one and then the second one in succession. The reason being is because I don't cover the same content in every single video, and some of the information in the previous 2 videos might be vital. Make sure you check them videos out first. Becoming a paramedic is no easy feat, but it's certainly a rewarding one. As part of the paramedic selection process, you'll need to pass a number of tests which assess the fundamental skills required to perform as a paramedic. So that makes these assessments an important part of the selection process. Therefore, don't overlook them. So let's start off with university first, nice and quick. There's not a lot to say about university. There aren't a lot of assessments, in fact, hardly any assessments before you join the course. All you need to do is acquire enough UCAS points to go ahead and apply with UCAS to hopefully get onto a student paramedic place with your chosen university, and also an interview process. If you're going through an ambulance service route, there are a lot more tests that are required before you can actually get a place on the student paramedic program. So when you're going through an ambulance service, when I went through it a few years back, before they offered it as a full BSc, Bachelor in Science degree, they offered it as a foundation degree, and that lasted approximately 28 months. But an awful lot hasn't changed since then, and the selection process is still the same, if not a little bit more rigorous. And that is just to fine tune who comes into the ambulance service and the type of paramedics that they're going to put out on the road. So going through an ambulance service route, it probably does vary from trust to trust, which is understandable. Each trust has its own ambitions and values, and they take that into consideration when it comes to the type of employees they bring in. However, these tests are fairly standardized and are used by most ambulance services when they're recruiting their new batch of student paramedics. So what usually happens once your application process is complete and you've been invited to come and do the assessments? When I did it, it was split up into 2 days, but it might be a little bit different, especially now with the current pandemic situation. Some things might have to be done online or via a video call, so they're not always going to be the same, and so the situation might be a little bit different at the moment. But if we were to just magically just whisk away the pandemic, it's completely gone. Under a normal circumstance, you'd probably be invited for 2 days worth of assessments. So ambulance services are going to request a certain amount of commitment prior to actually joining a student paramedic program. And this also helps them to sift between the numbers and be able to separate the ones that are actually going to be able to commit and actually be able to perform and carry out this role from the ones that haven't gone all in and aren't able to fully commit. Ambulance services are going to want you to be prepared and be able to attend the selection date. Ambulance services will also require you to have a C1 driving license before you start the student paramedic program. Now, if you find that attaining a C1 is a bit pricey, or you might not be able to afford it at the moment, don't worry, because a lot of ambulance services actually financially support you in obtaining a C1 driving license. So usually they pay for it, and then they will take some sort of payment from your monthly salary for the first 12 months and be able to settle that debt within 12 months. They're going to expect you to be prepared to be learning throughout the entire program. Of course, it's a learning program, an earn while you learn sort of agreement. So you'll be earning money. They're just going to want that commitment that you're going to also be learning for that money. So what assessments are you expecting to undertake when you apply for a job as a student paramedic. So you'd be expected to carry out a highway code test, and this assesses your knowledge of the highway code. This is essential for paramedics as you'll often need to safely navigate roads and highways in order to deliver care, save lives and perform our job in general. These are pure knowledge-based questions, so your best bet is to learn the highway code through and through. A sample question will be something like, a horse rider is in the left-hand lane when you're approaching a roundabout. You should expect the rider to A, go in any direction, B, turn left, or C, turn right. You'd also be expected to do a verbal reasoning test. You'll be assessed on your ability to understand the difference between associated words and phrases. This will involve questions where you fill in the blanks within a sentence and see if you can appropriately fill in that sentence. For example, which of the following words is the odd one out? Red, white, dart, bright, sight. Next, numerical reasoning test. So usually this is split up into two different types of questions for this scenario, and that's general numerical reasoning and paramedic numerical reasoning. Questions in this category require you to work with simple operations such as addition, subtraction, divisions, multiplication. These questions are often applied to situations and might involve dealing with money, objects, or measurements. Here's an example of a general numerical reasoning question. There are 10 people in a team. 5 of them weigh around about 70 kg. The other 5 weigh 75 kg. What is the average weight of the team? Now, paramedic numerical reasoning. So this is very similar to the general numerical reasoning. It's just a little bit more paramedic focused. So the type of calculations you might need to do out on the road when you're calculating things like drugs or certain dosages, things like that. These type of questions usually involve you calculating things like speed, distance, time, especially when it comes to driving an ambulance. An example question of this is, you've been called to an RTC 120 miles away. You'll travel at an average speed of 70 miles an hour. How long will it take you to get there? Another test that you may or may not have to do, I certainly had to do it, was a problem solving test. So in this test, what they did was they got a number of the applicants, put them all on different tables, set out a problem and work out a solution to the problem. Now, it's important to mention that there's no wrong or right answers in these tests, and it's not about getting the right answer or coming up with a solution. They're just looking for your engagement and how you display yourself in a situation where a problem needs solving. So be invited for a mock driving test, and so that'll be a day when you go out and drive a van for around 20 minutes or so. This is just a chance for the educational officers who are assessing you to be able to assess what sort of driver you are, what sort of driving habits you have, and if you're going to be a safe blue light driver. That's the main thing. Also, the officer will be looking at whether you've maintained your driving standards since passing. So if you've newly passed or not long been passed, you're going to be at advantage here, because with time people pick up bad habits and develop bad habits, and they're the ones that are usually hard to break. So when you go for your mini driving assessment, they'll be able to assess how much you change and what bad habits you picked up. Just like any other driving test, if the officer has to take control of the vehicle because they don't feel you're safe enough behind the wheel, then I'd consider that a failure. So it is an absolute must that you get some form of driving experience with a larger vehicle before you go for your assessments. If you've only been driving cars or small cars, then driving bigger vehicles can become challenging. Becoming acclimatized to a larger vehicle will only work in your favor, so that's something highly recommended. Another assessment that you'll be expected to carry out is a fitness assessment. Lifting is a task that's frequently carried out by operational staff. Sometimes when we're responding to patients who have fallen or have got themselves stuck somewhere, the only thing we can do is lift them out, and sometimes the equipment and the tools that we use are just not going to do the job, and we have to use brute force to get them out. Therefore, fitness and strength is an important part of this job role, and you've got to be able to display a minimum amount for them to consider you for this job. It can be a significant challenge for some people, and therefore I recommend that you do prepare for this. Don't just walk in thinking you're going to breeze it, because sometimes with some of the assessments you'll be surprised. You feel like you're going to be able to fly through it all, and then it comes to doing it on the day and perhaps nerves got the better of you, but you just might underperform, and then that whole day has gone to waste. The whole application has gone down the pan, and you're going to have to start again. So make sure you strengthen that core, strengthen your back, and improve your cardiovascular performance before you go for these tests. Most leisure centres and PTs will be able to get you up to that level of fitness to be able to pass these tests. So as part of the assessments, you have to be able to display a resting heart rate of less than 90 beats per minute. Your blood pressure has to remain below 160 systolic and 95 diastolic. There's a leg and back strength test. It's like a deadlift. There's a bar on the floor that has some resistance and you have to lift that up. You have to be able to lift 117 kg worth of pressure, and you get 3 attempts to do that. There's the hand grip test. So there's hand grips that are able to measure how much pressure you're applying to it. And you have to be able to achieve at least 35 kg in your dominant hand and 33 kg in your non-dominant hand. And for that, you get 3 attempts as well. Also a flexibility test. You have to be able to touch your toes while standing and while seated without bending your legs. It's harder than it sounds. Okay, in addition to this, there's going to be a bit of an aerobic test as well. And so they'll be testing your fitness levels while you're having to carry heavy equipment and be able to perform ambulance tasks such as compressions. There'll be 2 phases to this. Phase 1 will be a warm-up and phase 2 will be the actual aerobic test. And that is a step test that's broken up into 2 parts. The first part is you're carrying a 10 kg kettlebell. There'll be a metronome and you just got to step onto a step carrying the 10 kg kettlebell and step every time it beeps. A little bit like this. And then they'll want you to do some CPR in the meantime, and that's basically your rest. So there'll be a mannequin there. They'll show you the technique, but it's not important. But yeah, you'll just be performing compressions, and that's your break really. Okay, so the second part of phase 2 is carrying 2 14 kg kettlebells. As such, 1 in each hand. These are dumbbells, I know, but here we go. And they'll expect you to do a step test again. Exactly the same, but now you're carrying more weight, but it's evened out in 2 hands. And it will be timed to a metronome, and they'll want you to step every single time you hear the beep. 1 up, 1 down. 1 up, 1 down. Yeah, I think I might have to start my own little fitness channel as well. Your heart rate will be monitored throughout phases 1 and 2. If you have any concerns and don't feel physically fit enough to be able to carry on, you can always stop. Or if you have any medical conditions that might affect you being able to carry out a fitness test, it's important that you speak to your doctor beforehand and get medical clearance to be able to carry out a fitness test such as this, as it's a vital part of the job and an assessment that you must carry out. And lastly, the interview. So if you've made it throughout the assessments and you've got to the point of interview, this is the final defining moment that will make or break your dreams of becoming a student paramedic. Usually a standard interview template is used to keep it fair for everybody, and all candidates are assessed against that criteria. The interview is actually designed for the services to actually learn a little bit about you and what made you want to become a part of the ambulance service, and a chance for you to highlight some of your individual qualities and skills. Very important, however, candidates would be expected to demonstrate an understanding of the role, an understanding of the ambulance services, policies, procedures, and their trust, values, and visions. They'll also explain further terms and conditions to the contract itself and give you that opportunity to ask any questions that may hinder or affect your development throughout the program. Now, when it comes to completing the application form, it's very, very important that you complete all fields. With the NHS jobs, you can fill it out in bits and save the draft and go back to it later. So just make sure that you complete all the different fields, as missing information will only delay the process. As you can imagine, ambulance services, they can only make a decision after they have all the information that you've given them. It's important to mention, if you have gone through a university route or you choose to go through a uni route, then upon qualification, you will have to apply for an ambulance service for a job as a graduate paramedic, and you'll probably have to go through a lot of these assessments prior to joining the service. Okay, so that's it for video number 3 of this series. Hope the content that I share with you brings value. If it does, make sure you press like, subscribe, notifications bell, you know the drill. It helps me out a lot with YouTube. The next video in the series, we'll be looking at what you can expect from the course once you get accepted on a place on a student paramedic program, whether it's with uni or with an ambulance service, and what the journey will consist of over the next 3 years. Once again, my name's Ayaz. I'll see you on the next one.